This is music. This is 5 albums that had a huge impact on me when I was a teenager. So this is my entry into Robert on my turntables contest. He's pushing for 700 subscribers, and actually, by the time of me shooting this, he has made that goal. It's at 702 or something, so that's absolutely great. Congratulations on that. But I figured I would join in anyways. The rules, or the rule, I guess, is very simple. He wants to see 5 albums that have had an impact on us when we were teenagers. I was a teenager in the 90s. That was a decade where extreme metal was on the rise. It was the decade of groove metal. It was a decade when thrash metal was huge and then took a nosedive, when hard rock and sleaze metal and glam metal and all that stuff was huge and then took a nosedive because it was also the era of alternative rock. But it was also a decade where some very unlikely metal bands and hard rock bands became sort of household items. So I picked 5 albums, and these are not a top 5, and these are not the only 5 albums that had a huge impact on me when I was a teenager. I just picked 5 that I thought would be kind of fun to talk about, and I divided it into genres. So I have an album that represents extreme metal. I have an album that represents groove metal, one that represents sort of this mainstream metal, one that represents hard rock, and one that represents thrash metal, because these were genres I listened to quite a lot back then. So let's just get the big one out of the way, the sort of uh, mainstream one. That's of course Metallica's the Black Album, or just Metallica really. Now, this is far from my favorite Metallica album, and it was far from my favorite Metallica album when I was a teenager. Um, but I was familiar with, I was a huge fan of, I loved the 80s output by Metallica, but I discovered that before I was a teenager. This album I discovered when I was a teenager, and to be honest, I was kind of disappointed with it a bit, but I also kind of loved it at the same time. I was disappointed with it because it was not as fast and aggressive, and it was simpler than my favorite Metallica albums, Master of Puppets, and also and Justice for All. And you know what? I also like Ride the Lightning much better than this one, and Kill 'Em All much better than this one. However, this was the first album that had Metallica songs on it that I could actually play. Because Metallica was very difficult to play when you were just a newbie guitarist. But I learned how to play Enter Sandman and some of the other songs. And I actually ended up joining a Metallica cover band because of this album. And that cover band eventually became a real thrash metal band where we wrote our own material and made demo tapes and played gigs and even appeared on some compilations. So, and we were all huge Metallica fans. So, that started with Enter Sandman and this album. And to be honest, there are some songs on it that I think are very good. I don't think it's aged that well, and I actually kind of like the deep cuts better than the hits for some reason. But, Metallica, the Black Album, had a huge impact on me when I was a teenager. Uh, Another album that had a huge impact on me, of course, because they all have, was this one here, The Razor's Edge by AC/DC. This was not the first AC/DC album I heard. That was Flick of the Switch. But this was the one that made it all click. I just loved all the songs in this one, even Mistress for Christmas. A lot of people hate on that one. This is the album that made me just appreciate the genius of the Young Brothers, that made me appreciate the crazy vocals of Brian Johnson, and made me appreciate the simplicity of AC/DC's brand of hard rock, that simple music can be good. It doesn't have to be super complex. Simple music can be good. You know, apropos my disappointment with the Metallica album. Uh, and this also inspired me to explore their back catalog of albums, and that was mostly in the form of dub tapes made by friends. And one of my friends made a dub tape with probably Back in Black and For Those About to Rock on it. And there was just enough room on one of the sides for him to also include Let There Be Rock. So I didn't even know they had a different singer at some point. So I heard Let There Be Rock. That was a crazy, aggressive song. And you had this another kind of wild, crazy vocalist, it sounded like. So that inspired me to go back and check out the Bon Scott era. And AC/DC remain one of my favorite bands today. They have had a huge impact on me as a music fan and my music taste, and also the way I write and play and compose music myself. So certainly a super important album to me, and also a good one. And the last vinyl I'm gonna show you, because the two of them are gonna be CDs. I don't have them on vinyl, but that's the thrash metal representative, Sacred Reich, The American Way. I just adored this. I still have it. The Digipack, the original Digipack. It's a bit worn out. This is a reissue, of course. And the impact this had, first of all, in addition to teaching me that thrash metal can be mid-tempo and still be awesome, and it can be political. You can have something to say. So that inspired me to seek out a lot of more politically oriented thrash metal and so on and so forth. But there's also a song on it called 31 Flavors, which is a funk song. And the whole message to that song is, you know what, metal is cool, but there's other stuff out there that will enrich in your life if you listen to that as well. That was one of the lessons. And one thing I noted when I listened to it was that a lot of their other songs, although they're all out thrash metal songs, they kind of have a funky feel to them. There's a song called, I think it's The Way It Is. My cat is attacking my beard, by the way. The Way It Is, the chorus is kind of funky, and I kind of like that. This is quality thrash metal, and some absolutely great guitar solos. This also had a huge impact on the way I would sort of write music in the thrash metal band I was in. So Sacred Reich, The American Way. Moving on to a CD, Symbolic by Death. And this one is very difficult to get your hands on in vinyl these days. Now, I gotta be honest, back in the early 90s, death metal didn't sit very well with me. I just couldn't stomach the vocals. I appreciated the musicianship, but the vocals, they weren't even singing, they were just growling. But this album changed that for me, because this album made me appreciate harsh vocals. I know Chuck Schuldiner's vocals are a bit sort of more screechy on this album, but that one just made it click. This one and The Incomplete by Obituary made me appreciate vocals that are not necessarily melodic. And all the songs in this one are fantastic, and I spend a lot of time trying to just, be 1/1,000th as proficient a musician as what you heard here. I failed at that completely, of course. But yeah, this has had a pivotal impact on me, because that was my entryway into extreme metal. It taught me to appreciate extreme metal, including death metal. And the last one then represents groove metal. Now, it's actually Cowboys from Hell by Pantera. Most people, I think, will go with maybe Far Beyond Driven, or maybe Vulgar Display of Power. That kind of depends, I think, on when you got into Pantera. I know some people really like Great Southern Trendkill. But this was the first Pantera album I heard. I picked up a copy I borrowed from the local music library on CD, and I had never heard anything that was that groovy. I didn't know it was called groove back then, but you couldn't help but just bop along to it. And you had like some songs like Primal Concrete Sledge. That was almost like brutal. That was before I discovered really extreme metal. I hadn't heard anything as brutal as that. But what I liked about this, and still like about it, is that it's groove metal, it's heavy, but you still have like Phil Anselmo doing like some more old school heavy metal, high pitched screams, and in addition to his tough guy stuff, you have some more sort of heavy metal bits and bobs, like the sort of main riff of Domination. Sounds a bit more like heavy metal to me. But this had a huge impact on, again, me as a musician or amateur musician, and my songwriting. I really started incorporating a lot of groovy riffs and a lot of pentatonic stuff into my guitar playing after I heard this one. So you can say whatever you want to say about Pantera nowadays. Cowboys from Hell had a massive impact on me and my taste in music. And you know why I picked it up? Because it had a picture of a dude with a sandwich on it. I kind of thought that was kind of hilarious. So these were just 5 of the albums that had a massive impact on me when I was a teenager. Congratulations to Robert on my Turntable for actually reaching the 700 subscribers. I don't know if I'm too late in the game here, but I figured I wanted to just chime in anyways. Thanks for watching.